Hello everyone. This video will kind of introduce you to story problems, at least at the beginning algebra level. Okay, so the key to story problems is basically understanding what you're being asked to do. Okay, so right now we're going to go over a few key terms to look for and what those terms basically are instructing you to do. Okay, so you know that you're going to want to use addition if you see the word sum, plus, either added or added to, more than, increased by, and if you see the word total. Okay, so you know that you're going to have to use subtraction if you see difference or difference of, if you see the word minus, if you see the word subtracted or subtracted from, less than, decreased by, or just the word less by itself. Alright, so you know that you're going to use multiplication if you see the word product, times, or if they just come out and say multiply. If you see the word twice, that means to multiply by 2. Or if you see the word of. Okay, so for example, if you see 1/3 of 58, that would just be 1/3 times 58. Okay, so you have to be careful when you see the word of is not the same as difference of. If you see of and difference of, two different things. But if you see just of by itself, that's what you'd use multiplication. Okay, so you have, for your division, you see the word quotient, divide, into, ratio, or divided by. Okay, you could also see the word or the term quotient of. Okay, so possibly you could also see quotient of. Alright, so if you're still writing, please feel free to press pause. But we still have one more group of terms to go over, so I'm going to go ahead and go to that last group. Alright, so these are terms you will see when dealing with equality or your equal sign. You'll see the word equals, gives, either the word is, was, or should be. You'll see yields, amounts to, represents, or you can see the phrase is the same as. Okay, so those would imply using your equal sign at that point. Alright, so once again, if you're still writing, please feel free to press pause. But for now, we're going to go to our first example. Okay, so for our first example, let's say if you wanted to find the difference of 9x and 8x is 107, and you want to solve for x. Okay, so we see here if we wanted to solve, okay, we know that difference of means subtraction. Okay, so the difference of 9x and 8x. Okay, remember, is means equal to 107. Okay, so 9x minus 8x is just 1x. So 1x is just x. So x equals 107. Okay, so this one didn't have a whole lot of work to it. I mainly wanted to use this as an introduction into how you would translate a lot of these problems. Okay, now some of them can get a little more complicated, so we'll go into one of those now. Okay, and if you're still writing, feel free to press pause. We're going to go to our next example. Okay, so this example says 3 more than the difference between 6x and 5x is equal to the difference of 12 and 1 over 6. Okay, so we're going to kind of get this one little by little. Okay, so if we start off just with the difference between 6x and 5x. Difference between 6x and 5x. Okay, so we know that would be 6x minus 5x. Okay, now we see 3 more than the difference of 6x and 5x. 3 more than the difference between 6x and 5x. Okay, so that's 3 more than. Okay, we already know the difference between 6x and 5x is this. Now 3 more than that, and you'd end up with 6x minus 5x plus 3. Because remember, more than means addition. Okay, and then we get to the word is. We know is means equal to, so we already have this left side done. So that's going to give us 6x minus 5x plus 3 is equal to the difference of 12 and 6x. Well, 1 over 12 and 1 over 6. I'm sorry, I'm looking right there. Okay, so 1 over 12 minus 1 over 6. And this is our difference of 1 over 12 and 1 over 6. Difference of 1 over 12 and 1 over 6. Okay, so now we can go ahead and solve. Okay, so we can go ahead and combine those two. So 6x minus 5x is just 1x, or x plus 3 equals 1 over 12 minus 1 over 6. Okay, now you can do this one of 2 ways. You can multiply each term by 12 to get rid of the denominators, because 12 is your least common denominator. Or you can just multiply this 1 over 6 by 2 over 2 and get a common denominator, but you still have to end up multiplying by the least common denominator anyway. So you might as well do that first. Okay, so multiply each term by the least common denominator, which is equal to 12, since you have the 2 denominators there. Okay, so kind of clean up that M a little bit. There we go. Okay, so if we multiply each term by 12, we have 12 times x plus 12 times 3 equals 1 over 12 times 12 minus 1 over 6 times 12. Alright, so that will give us 12 times x, which is 12x, bring that up a little bit. There we go. Minus 12, or plus 12 times 3, which is 36, equals, these two 12s cancel each other out. So you have basically 1 times 1, which is 1, minus 6 goes into 6 one time, 6 goes into 12 twice. So we multiply what's left, which gave us our 2. Alright, so you can go ahead and combine those two. So that gives us 12x plus 36 equals 1 minus 2 is negative 1. Okay, so we go ahead and subtract 36 from both sides. So we have 12x equals negative 37. So if we divide both sides by 12, anything divided by itself is 1. That would give us x equals negative 37 over 12. Alright, so hopefully that made sense. Okay, so if you're still writing, please feel free to press pause, but we're going to go ahead and go to our next example. Oh, actually, I'm going to introduce a few problem-solving strategies first. Okay, so some of these will help you, especially if you have actual story problems and not just translations. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is understand the problem. Okay, because if you don't understand the problem and what they're asking you to do, then you're just going to be lost. So understand the problem by rereading or drawing a picture. Okay, and then you want to choose a variable to represent the unknown. Okay, normally you can see the unknown in the last sentence. They'll tell you exactly what you're looking for. Okay. Now the second thing you want to do is you want to translate the problem into an equation. So once you have your unknowns and your variable representing your unknowns, you want to translate that into an equation. Okay. Then the third step is to solve it. Okay. Now your fourth step is you want to check to make sure that the solution makes sense. Okay. If it doesn't make sense, then you know somewhere along the line you made an error. Okay. So for example, if your solution would make sense if you got an answer of 5, but you ended up with 500, which wouldn't make sense to you. So you want to double check everything and make sure you didn't make an error somewhere. All right. So once again, if you're still writing, feel free to press pause, but we're going to go to our first example using this strategy. Okay. So for this example, it says the sum of two numbers is negative 61. One number is 35 more than the other. Find the numbers. All right. So here we know the sum of two numbers is negative 61. So what I'm going to do is draw a little picture to help me visualize it. So if we know the sum of two numbers is negative 61, then we know our first number plus our second number equals negative 61. Like I say, you may not need that, but sometimes it just helps to visualize it. Okay, now we know that one number is 35 more than the other. So if we let x equal our first number, Okay, it's our first unknown number. Okay, now what if we let our other number equal, remember, one number is 35 more than the other. So this is one number, x, and we know that it's 35 more than is addition. So that would be x. Now 35 more than x is x plus 35. Okay, so hopefully that part of it made sense. So if we have our first number plus our second number equals negative 61, then that will give us, I'm just separating that a little bit, our first number is x plus our second number, x plus 35, equals negative 61. Okay, so as we did our first step, we assigned variables to our unknowns. And as our second step, we turned it into an equation. Okay, so now we go ahead and we solve it. Okay, so x here, if you have that plus and then the parentheses, you didn't have to put the parentheses. I just put it to show that this represented the second number. So you have x plus 35 equals negative 61. Okay, let me go ahead and move this up. So we go ahead and combine those two. X plus x is 2x. So 2x equals 2x plus 35. Sorry about that. I'm jumping ahead. I have a bad habit of doing that. Equals negative 61. Okay, so we go ahead and subtract 35 from both sides. We're left with 2x equals negative 61 plus negative 35 is negative 96. Alright, so if we divide both sides by 2, anything divided by itself is just 1. Move that up some more. So you have x equals, negative divided by positive is negative, 96 divided by 2 is 48. Okay, so x equals 48. Now be really, really, really careful here. Sometimes when you see this, you're like, okay, I solved for x, I'm done. No, you just solved for the first number. Okay, remember, you have a first number and a second number you have to solve for. So when you just solve for x, you're like 95% done. You're not all the way done just yet. Alright, so you want to make sure that you go ahead and you solve for your second number. Okay, so for your second number, remember your second number is x plus 35. Okay, so if we replace x with negative 48, that makes it negative 48 plus 35, which is equal to negative 13. Okay, so you have your first number and you have your second number. And if you add those two together, you will get negative 61. Alright, hopefully that made sense. Alright, so if you're still writing, once again, feel free to press pause, but we're going to go ahead and go to our next example. Okay, so for our next example, I want you to actually give this one a try. Here we go. Okay, so if a package of 8 apples costs $3.20, how much is a single apple? Okay, so sometimes it would help to rewrite your original problem into something that kind of flows a little easier with what you're looking for. So try that first, and then once you press pause and work it out, we'll come back and finish it up. Alright, so assuming you've pressed pause and you've already worked it out. Okay, so we're going to draw a little diagram. So a package of 8 apples costs $3.20. So a package of 8 apples is $3.20. Okay, so that's where it sometimes helps to rewrite it. Okay, so a package of it, well, let's say if we let A equals 1 apple, or represent apples. Okay, so if we have a package of 8 apples, that's 1 apple 8 times. So that gives us 8A. Clean that up a little bit. There we go. Is, remember when you see is, that equals. $3.20 is just 3.20. Okay, so that leaves us with our equation, 8A equals 3.20. Alright, so now we just divide both sides by 8. So we have A equals 3.20, or you can write it as 3.2, divided by 8. Alright, and just in case you may have forgotten how to divide decimals, okay, so if we have 3.2 divided by 8, we're just going to rewrite that as 3.2 divided by 8. Alright, so go ahead and move our decimal up. Just move it straight up. 8 doesn't go into 3, but 8 can go into 32. 8 goes into 32 4 times. 8 times 4 is 32. And gives us 0, so we end up with 0.4. So A equals 0.4. But since we're talking about money, that's just 40 cents. Okay, so remember 0.4 and 0.40 is the same thing. 0.4 equals 0.40. Or you can make it equal 0.400. You can add as many zeros to the right as you like. It could be the same thing. Alright, so hopefully that made sense to you. Alright, so if you're still writing, press pause, but we're going to go ahead to our next example. Alright, so again, I want you to try this one. Okay, so Max pays $1,620 each month for rent. He pays $120 more than twice what his brother Jeff pays in rent. How much does Jeff pay in rent? All right, so go ahead and press pause, and I want you to try this one. All right, so assuming you've already worked this one out, we're going to go ahead and solve this one. Okay, so just like we did on the previous example, we're going to go ahead and kind of rewrite that problem. If you look at the very last sentence, how much does Jeff pay in rent? Okay, that's what we're looking for. How much Jeff pays in rent. Okay, but the first thing we're going to do, we're going to rewrite this in like a little diagram form. Okay. So basically what they're saying is that Max's rent is $120 more than twice Jeff's rent. Okay. Max's rent is $120 more than Jeff's rent. Okay, so that's what they've given us so far. Okay, we just got what they gave us and we rewrote it. Okay, so if we know that Max's rent is $1,620, remember is means equal to $120 more than Jeff's rent. So 120, we know that more than equals plus Jeff's rent. Well, we don't know what Jeff's rent is because that's what we're looking for. So what we're going to do is we're going to let X equal Jeff's rent. Okay. So if we know our Jeff's rent is our unknown, let that equal X. But remember, it's more than twice, $120 more than twice what Jeff's rent is. Okay, so really we're looking for twice Jeff's rent. Okay, which means you're going to have 2x. Now, if it said 3 times Jeff's rent, it would be 3x or something like that. So it varies. But when you see that word twice, then you know it's 2 times x. Okay, so let's go over everything. Make sure we didn't miss anything. Okay, so Max pays $120 more than twice what Jeff pays in rent. Okay, so Max's rent is $120 more than twice Jeff's rent. Okay, so we have everything that we need. So our equation is 1,620 equals 120 plus 2x. All right, so we're going to go ahead and subtract 120 from both sides. Okay, these two cancel out. So we have 2x equals 1620. Why did I put that 5 there? I have no idea why I did that. There we go. 1620 minus 120. I was jumping ahead because that's 1500. That's probably where that 5 came from. That shouldn't have been there. Alright, so if we go ahead and divide both sides by 2, anything divided by itself is 1. So we have x equals 1500 divided by 2 is 750. Okay, so we know that Jeff pays $750 in rent. Okay, so if you double Jeff's rent, 750 times 750, they give you 1,500, and add another $120 to that, you get the 1,620. Okay, so that's how you just double check it to make sure, okay, if I plug this in, would this make sense? All right, so hopefully that made a little bit of sense. And if you're still writing, feel free to press pause, but for now, we're going to go to our next example. All right. So for this one, a local gym has a total of 434 male and female members. There are 78 more male than female members. Find the number of men and women members. All right, so I want you to press pause and give this one a try. Then we'll come back and solve it. All right, so assuming you've pressed pause and you've worked this one out already, we're going to go ahead and solve it. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is draw a little diagram explaining exactly what I want. Okay, so we know here that the local gym has a total of 434 male and female members. That total means you're going to add. That's how I knew it had to add there. Okay, so if we had female members plus male members, total 434. Okay. So we know that male members and female members, instead of total, that should probably be equal, or is. That will probably fit better with our, probably equal, with our rewrite of the sentence. There we go. It doesn't matter which word you put as long as it makes sense to you. I just think equal would make more sense. So if you want to use is, you could use is. If you want to use equal, you can use equal, as long as it makes sense to you. All right. So for our female members, we don't know how many female members we have, but we do know that there are 78 more male than female members. Okay, so for our female members, we'll let X represent our female members. Now, since there are 78 more male than female, that will mean our male members would be X plus 78 equals 434. Alright, so like I said, this is just an approach you can use. If you have a different approach or another way you wanted to word it, you can most definitely do that. Okay, so that gives us X plus 78. Since it's plus, we can kind of drop the parentheses. Equals 434. And now we just go ahead and solve it. Okay, so if we combine those two, X plus X is 2X. So we have 2X plus 78 equals 434. Okay, so if we subtract 78 from both sides, those two cancel out. Move that up a little bit. So we have 2X equals 434 minus 78 is 356. And if we divide both sides by 2, bring that up a little bit, there we go. We have X equals 356 divided by 2 is 178. Okay, so once again, be really careful because they ask us to find the number of men and women. X is just the number of female members. Okay, we still have to solve for the number of male members. Okay, so we know the number of male members is X plus 78. So we have X plus 78, which if we replace the X with 178, that gives us 178 plus 78, which is 256. Okay, so if you add 256 plus 178, you will get 434. Okay, so our answer would make sense. Alright, so hopefully that all made sense. If you're still writing, press pause, but we're going to move to our next type of story problem. And that's looking at consecutive integer problems. Okay, so we're just going to start right up here for now, and then we'll go right into an example. Okay, so consecutive integers just means if you go 3, 4, 5, or -8, -7, -6, or if you have -55, -54, -53, or 201, 202, 203, it's just any three integers, one after another after another. Okay, I just picked these two as examples. Okay, so no matter what integer you start with, that very first integer is going to be some unknown x, because we have no idea where we're going to start most times. Okay, so we'll just call that first integer x. Now, no matter what, to get to the next consecutive integer, you're going to have to move over one place if you start from x. Now, let's say if you wanted to get to that second consecutive integer, you're going to have to move over 2 places from where you started. Okay, so if your first integer was 3, to get to 4, you have to add 1. If your second integer is, well, if your integer is 4, to get to that second one, you have to add 2. To get to the third one, you have to add 3. And it keeps on going and going and going. Well, your fourth one, rather. Okay, same thing here. If you have -8, you're starting at x, even though here we know x is -8. But if you have a -7, which is your next consecutive integer, that means you have to add 1 to the -8. Now, to get to the next consecutive integer after that, if you're starting at x, you're going to have to add 2 to that next integer to get to that next integer. And then to get to -5, you'd have to add 3. To get to -4, you have to add 4. And it just keeps on going and going. So whenever you see a story problem and it says 2 consecutive integers, those 2 consecutive integers will always be x and x plus 1. Okay, that will always be your 2 consecutive integers. So that means if you see a problem that says 3 consecutive integers, okay, so if you see 3 consecutive integers, that means your integers will be x, that's your first, your second will be x plus 1, and your third will be x plus 2. Okay, so if you saw 4 consecutive integers, it'd be x, x plus 1, x plus 2, and x plus 3. Same as up here, x, x plus 1, x plus 2. Those are your 3 consecutive integers. -8, -7, -6, x, x plus 1, x plus 2. Okay, so just remember these for your consecutive integers. Alright, so now we're going to go right into our example. Okay, so it says the sum of two consecutive integers is negative 59. And you want to find the integers. Okay, so we know the sum of two consecutive integers is negative 59. When we see sum, we automatically know we're going to be doing addition. Okay, so that means our first integer plus our second integer is negative 59. Okay. Now, if you want to write is, or you just want to go ahead and put the equal sign, you could do that also. Okay, so as long as you're accurately rewriting the question. Okay, so we know when we have two consecutive integers, those two integers are x and x plus 1. Okay, so we'll make our first integer x plus our second integer. We can make that our x plus 1. Remember, is means equal to negative 59. Alright, so now we're just going to go ahead and rewrite that as x plus, and since it's plus and you have the parentheses, you can go ahead and drop the parentheses. X plus 1 equals negative 59. Okay, so we have our equation. Now we go ahead and solve. X plus x, we can combine those just to get 2x. So we have 2x plus 1 equals negative 59. Okay, so if we subtract 1 from both sides, we have 2x equals negative 60. So if we divide both sides by 2, that gives us x equals negative 30. Alright, so remember, that's just our first integer. We still have to solve for our second integer. Okay, so our second integer is x plus 1. Okay, now remember, we can replace x with negative 30. So that gives us negative 30 plus 1, which is negative 29. Okay, so we have now our first integer and our second integer. Okay, so if you add those together, you'll get negative 59. Alright, so now we're going to look at a few different problems. We're going to look at some percent problems. Okay, so what we're going to do with this one is we're going to do the exact same thing. But we're just going to rewrite it. So when you have a percent problem, so for example, what number is 132% of 694? Alright, so if we just rewrite that to be what number is 132% okay, but your percent, you're going to remember you have to convert those to decimal. That's very key. of 694. Okay, so all I did was get that very same problem and just broke it up into separate sections. Okay, now what number? That's our unknown. So we make that x. Is, remember, is means equal to 132%. Remember, you have to convert percent to decimals. And you do that by moving the decimal place 2 spaces to the left. Okay, so I'll make a little side note of that. So 132%. If you get the decimal, which will be at the end, and move it 2 spaces to the left, so 132, and move 2 spaces to the left, so you get 1.32. So 132% converted to a decimal is 1.32. Remember, of is multiplication. So I'll go ahead and put that right here since we have a little bit of space. 694. Okay, so x is equal to 1.32 times 694. X is equal to 1.32 times 694. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and multiply those. Just a quick little review in case you've forgotten how to multiply decimals. So when you're multiplying decimal numbers, the first thing you want to do is temporarily remove all decimal points. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just multiply that out right over here. So if you have 694, remove all the decimals, that's just 132. Alright, so 2 times 4 is 8, 2 times 9 is 18, 6 times 2 is 12, plus 1 is 13, put a 0 there, 3 times 4 is 12, oh, let me erase those carryovers, there we go. Okay, 3 times 4 is 12, 2 carry 1, 3 times 9 is 27, plus 1 is 28. 3 times 6 is 18, plus 2 is 20. Okay, so we can erase those carryovers and bring down our 2 zeros. Probably should have gave that a little more space. There we go. Bring that over just a little more. There we go. Okay, 1 times 4 is 4, 1 times 9 is 9, 1 times 6 is 6, so we go ahead and add those together. We have 8, 10, 8 plus 4 is 12, plus 3 is 15, plus 1 is 16. 1 plus 0 plus 9. Oh, forgot to carry 1 there. 9, 10, 11. 6 plus 2 is 8, plus 1 is 9, so we have 916.08. Okay, now this is the key to multiplying decimals. We have 694 and 1.32. You only have 2 decimal places to the right. Now, if you had 2 more up here, then you have 4 decimal places to the right. But for both of these combined, you only have a total of 2 decimal places. Okay, so that means you're going to move the decimal from the end, you're going to move it over twice. So you have 916.08. Okay, so x equals 916.08. So 916.08 is 132% of 694. All right, so hopefully that made some sense to you. All right, so we're going to go ahead and move on to our next example. That this was mainly just extra. This is the main part of the problem up here. So our next example will look a little different. Now, one thing I want to point out, well, looking at this, it says 537.05 is what percent of 467? Okay. So one thing I want to point out is because they're asking what percent, whenever you see what percent and you're solving for percents, you have to convert your final answer, which will come out to be a decimal. You have to convert that to a percent. Okay, so you do that by moving your decimal point 2 places to the right, and then you put the percent sign up. Okay, so that's really key when solving for percent. All right, so let's go ahead and solve this one. And we're just going to rewrite it one section at a time. So 537.05 is what percent of 467. Okay, so we just got the entire problem and rewrote it a different way. All right, so we just go ahead and get each one. 537.05 is, remember, is just equal to what percent? We don't know. That's our unknown. So we make that our x of, remember, that's just multiplication. 467 is just 467. So really this is just 537.05 equals x times 467. Or you can make it 467x, same thing. All right, so we go ahead and divide both sides by 467. I'll put the parentheses instead of that so it doesn't look like a decimal. Okay, so those two cancel each other out. So I'm just going to go ahead and switch this around because for some reason I like my variables to be on the left. So x equals 537.05 over 467. Okay, and actually that is equal to 1.15. X is equal to 1.15. Oops, sorry about that. Okay, now remember, this is a percent that you're solving for. So this answer has to be converted to percent. Okay, so if you're going to convert a decimal to percent, you just move the decimal point 2 places to the right. So that means x equals 115%. All right. Okay, so now we're going to get into more applied percent problems. Oops, there we go. Okay, so let's say, for example, Paul pays $750 a month for rent. He makes $3,000 per month. So what percent of his monthly pay goes to rent? Okay, so the way I approach this is I get it and I rewrite it in the same way that we had it before. Okay, so what if you rewrite it? Okay, and remember, look at the last part. What percent of his monthly pay goes to rent? Okay, that's what you're looking for. So if we rewrite that, we can just say, $750 is what percent of Paul's income. Okay, so all we did was kind of rewrite what they're asking us for. Okay, so it means that our 750 is just that, 750. Our is equal to what percent. Remember, whenever you see what percent, you're going to convert that final answer to a percent. But we don't know what that is, so that's just going to be our x. Of multiplication, and Paul's income is $3,000. Okay, so that gives us 750 equals x times 3,000. You can make that 3,000 times x. All right, so now we just divide both sides by 3,000. Anything divided by itself is 1. So we have x equals 750 divided by 3,000 is 0.25. Okay, so once again, you want to remember whenever you're solving for percent, you want to convert that to percentage by moving the decimal over twice. That's the only time you have to do it. You don't have to do it any other time except when you're solving for the percent. Okay, so x would equal 25%. Okay, so that's how much of his income goes to rent. All right. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. So we're going to go ahead and do one more example. All right, and I want you to try this one. Okay, so for example, a burger at a restaurant has 2,070 milligrams of sodium, which is 86% of the recommended daily amount. What is the recommended daily amount of sodium? Okay, remember here, you're not solving for percent. They already gave you the percent, so you don't have to solve for it. So your final answer will just stay your final answer. You don't have to convert it. Okay, so you go ahead and press pause and try to figure this one out. Alright, so assuming you've already pressed pause and worked it out and everything else, we're going to go ahead and solve this one. Okay, so rewrite as one sentence. Okay, so they're asking us what the recommended daily amount is. They gave us the sodium and the percentage already. So we know that 2,070 milligrams of sodium is 86% of the recommended daily amount. Okay, kind of ran out of room there, so I had to pile recommended daily amount right up there. Okay, so 2,070 milligrams of sodium. That's just 2,070. That's our equal. 86%, remember you have to convert that to decimal. So to convert from percent to decimal, you move it 2 spaces to the left. Remember, to convert from decimal to percent, you move it 2 spaces to the right. So percent to decimal, 0.86. Of, remember that's multiplication. And the recommended daily amount, that's our unknown. Okay, so that gives us 2,070 equals 0.86 times x. Okay, so we go ahead and divide each side by 0.86. Anything divided by itself is 1. So x equals, and I'm just going to go ahead and flip it around. X equals 2,070 divided by 86 is actually 2,406.9767. Oh, one part of the problem I did forget to add, where we're going to round to the nearest milligram. Alright, so we're going to round this to the nearest milligram, so that means this becomes x equals 2,407 milligrams. Okay, so that's the recommended amount of sodium, or recommended daily amount of sodium. Alright, so I tried to do quite a few story problems. The one thing about story problems is that I could sit here and do 50 of them, and still you would have different story problems pop up. There's no way to possibly do an example of every story problem. So hopefully you've either figured out your own approach to them, or this process helped you. So good luck on your work, and I will see you on the next video.